Recently, I was watching a couple of breakdown videos between modern F1 cars and MotoGP bikes, and was surprised to learn that there's an aero trick that MotoGP copied from F1. And this trick was so clever it was banned from F1 for nearly 40 years. Pushing the limits in motorsport is everything. Engineers are always asking how fast you can make something go. But it all needs to be done within a set of predefined rules and regulations set by the organisers of that sport. And every single form of motorsport has the same thing. F1 and MotoGP are no exceptions. On occasion though, these innovations push too far, leading to bans that reshape the sport. One of these innovations is something called ground effect. Originally used in F1, it literally transformed how fast cars could go round a track. And now MotoGP are using the same concept. But here's the thing, ground effect is invisible. You can't see it while watching a race. So what exactly is ground effect? And why is it so powerful? Well, in this video, I'll break down how it works, why it was banned, and how MotoGP teams are using it to build lap record obliterating monsters in the modern era of motorbike racing. Alright, let's quickly learn what ground effect actually is so the rest of the video makes sense. If I take a piece of paper and blow over the top of it, what do you think is going to happen? Well, have a look at this. It does the opposite of what you might think it should do. The paper gets sucked upwards. But why? Well, it's all to do with pressure changes. Around 300 years ago, this guy here, Daniel Bernoulli, discovered that when air moves faster, its pressure drops. When I blow over the top of the piece of paper, the air above it moves faster than the air below. This difference in speed lowers the pressure on top. And because air naturally moves from a high pressure to a low pressure, this higher pressure below sucks or pushes the paper up. I've simplified it a lot here, but this is a very basic concept of how an aeroplane wing generates lift. Although there's a lot more information, if you want to learn about that, you can go down that rabbit hole. To be clear, I'm not an engineer. Now, I'll explain how MotoGP uses ground effect a little bit later in this video. But for some more context, let me explain how ground effect works in F1 first. If we take how an airplane wing generates lift and turn it upside down, all of a sudden we have the concept of how F1 and MotoGP generates downforce. Take a look at the bottom of a modern Formula 1 car. The floor isn't completely flat. The way ground effect is generated in F1 are with these Venturi tunnels. These tunnels are designed to channel air from the front of the car to the middle where the floor is lower. This compresses the air, which causes it to accelerate, which, as you know, causes the pressure to drop. With higher pressure above the car and lower pressure underneath, the car is sucked into the ground. As the air moves past the middle of the car, the diffuser expands the space, slowing the air down before it exits. This is a great way to increase the amount of downforce that a car provides without adding loads of different wings and spoilers, which increases the amount of drag on the car. But sometimes it can work a little too well and cause some issues which wouldn't be good in F1 or in MotoGP. Take a look at these videos. Look at the cars bouncing up and down. No, it's not the suspension doing it, it's called porpoising. The car is sucked towards the ground. But if the floor gets too close and touches the track, the airflow stalls and the downforce is lost. The air has nowhere to go. This causes the car to bounce back up, which restores the airflow and the downforce, only for the process to repeat again and again and again. Obviously, this can't happen in MotoGP. If bodywork touches the ground, it normally indicates that a crash has just happened. Okay, so you now know what ground effect is and how it made its way into F1, but it's actually been around for over half a century. And it wouldn't even exist in MotoGP without the help of some key people in the world of motorsport. Tony Rudd and Peter Wright of BRM conducted wind tunnel experiments on ground effect back in 1968. While they didn't fully grasp it, they developed a basic prototype that laid the groundwork for future designs. The first significant use of ground effect as we know it today can generally be credited to this man here, Colin Chapman. He sponsored Sean Buckley to study ground effect further, and along with Chapman, Buckley, Robin Hurd and Martin Ogilvy, they created the Lotus 78 F1 car. Introduced in the 1977 F1 season, it was the first F1 car to successfully use ground effect. As soon as the other teams caught wind of what Chapman and his team had done, more cars started to use the ground effect principle. And in a few short years, the speeds of F1 had completely skyrocketed, and the cars became faster and faster. And this came with a problem. If the car's floor came into contact with the ground, like the porpoising issue, it would purge all of the downforce from the car. But unlike the cars of today, the older wings and spoilers didn't generate nearly as much downforce. If this happened in the middle of a corner, they would suddenly find themselves careering towards the nearest hedge at around 200 miles an hour. Not ideal. So they banned it in 1982 and it didn't come back for 40 years. Okay, so that's all of the history dealt with. But how did MotoGP engineers take something from the world of Formula 1 and apply it to motorbike racing? Aero's been around for quite a while in MotoGP, and the whole reason they introduced aero in the first place was so riders could use more of the bike's power. Trying to manage 300 brake horsepower on a bike with no aero isn't easy, but once all of the teams started using aero, they needed to find another way to gain an advantage. Ground effect is only generated vertically. There's no such thing as horizontal ground effect. What this means is MotoGP bikes can only generate ground effect in a corner when the bike is leant over. Similar to F1, ground effect helps MotoGP bikes corner faster by allowing the tyres to generate more grip. Have a look at these photos of the bike leant over. Now take a closer look at the area of the bike which is closest to the ground. It's always the side fairing. Now have a look at the way the bike's side fairing is in relation to the ground. With the way the manufacturers have designed the bodywork at max lean angle, the bodywork is as close to the ground as possible, and it's parallel. They even go as far as to take the rider's maximum lean angle to make sure they design the aero packages and the side fairings of the bike to be just right.
The shape of this side is designed in order to reach the correct distance from the ground when the rider is at the maximum leaning angle.
So from what you now know about how ground effect works, at max lean angle, the air flows through this gap. It accelerates and this lowers the pressure. With the higher air pressure over the top of the bike and the lower air pressure underneath the bike, it sucks the bike into the ground, which helps the rider corner even faster. There's a couple of different design styles, but the principle is the same for all of them. These innovations a lot of the time work really well, but sometimes they don't. A great example of this is when Aprilia tried to use parts of an F1 engine in their MotoGP bike. If you want to learn more about that, click on this video here. Thanks for watching, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.